Newark, 1993. The Essex County Courthouse. The hallways are packed. It's a gauntlet of bad news and high stakes. You've got defendants pacing the tiles and lawyers whispering in corners. It's loud, it's chaotic, and it's business as usual. He's standing near the elevators, blending into the gray marble. He's been waiting for his moment across the hall. The target appears. He's walking tall, flanked by his people, acting like he's untouchable in a house of law. He doesn't notice the man in the crowd of faces. He doesn't see the hand diving deep into the pocket. The crowd goes thin. The eyes meet for a split second. The metal comes out, heavy and cold. But before we show you how he pulled that trigger, we have to show you how he got here. The conspiracy did not begin in the streets of Newark. It began over 500 miles away in North Carolina. Eddie Lee Filson Jr. sat in the South, stewing over the legal fate of his brother Charles and his cousin Darrell Hill. In his mind, the New Jersey judicial system was an enemy that needed to be dismantled. He didn't just decide to protest. He decided to strike at the heart of the prosecution. He packed his belongings and began a cold, calculated 500-mile transit. Every mile of that highway brought him closer to a high-rise fortress, the Essex County Superior Courthouse. But Eddie Lee knew he couldn't just walk into that building with a .357 Magnum. The newly installed metal detectors and the heavy presence of armed sheriff's officers made it a suicide mission for an outsider. For the prosecution's case to die, he didn't just need a gun, he needed a plan. Using a private staff entrance reserved for employees, she walked into the courthouse with a heavy .357 Magnum revolver concealed on her person. Because she was one of them, no one stopped her, no one searched her. Inside the building, she met Oliver at an agreed-upon location and passed him the weapon. By the time she handed that gun to Eddie Lee Filson Jr., the building's multi-million-dollar security system had been rendered completely useless. She hadn't just smuggled a gun. She had weaponized her position of trust to turn a sanctuary of law into a kill zone. On June 3rd, 1993, the 11th floor was thick with the nervous energy of the morning docket. Detective John Shirek Jr., a 30-year-old veteran of the Newark Police Department's narcotics unit, was there to testify. He was the state's star witness, the man whose word would likely send Charles Oliver to prison for years. As Shirek waited in the public area of the hallway, the inside job reached its violent conclusion. Eddie Lee Oliver Jr. stepped out of the crowd. He didn't hesitate. In a premeditated execution-style ambush, he fired at point-blank range. The .357 Magnum round struck Detective Shirek in the back of the head, killing him instantly. In the heart of the courthouse, the witness had been silenced. What followed was a feat of desperate, violent evasion that should have been impossible. The sound of the Magnum shot triggered an immediate response in a building loaded with armed police and sheriff's officers. Filson didn't surrender. He fought. As he scrambled for the exits, he opened fire on anyone wearing a badge. He critically wounded Essex County Sheriff's Officer Ralph Rizzolo Jr. with a shot that pierced his lung and injured Newark Police Officer Thomas King. Investigation later revealed that Filson's mission wasn't even finished. He had also planned to enter the courtroom to assassinate the presiding judge, Serena Peretti. 25 a.m., just 11 minutes after the shooting, the police find him sitting in a booth at the Burger King on Broad Street. He's staring out the window at the chaos he just created. When the emergency services unit kicks in the glass doors, he doesn't reach for a weapon. He doesn't say a word. He puts his hands on the table and waits for the steel to hit his wrists. The man who just executed a police officer in the halls of justice is taken into custody without a single shot fired. The investigation immediately turns to the impossible. How did a convicted felon get a loaded .357 Magnum into one of the most secure buildings in New Jersey? The answer lies with a 23-year-old probation officer named Tanesha James. She wasn't just a bystander. She was the key. James used her official badge to bypass the metal detectors through an employee side entrance. On the 11th floor, she met the gunman and handed him a bag containing the weapon. By the time the shooting started in the hallway, the woman who provided the gun had already slipped back into her office to wait out the storm. The 1995 trial is a grueling look at a system that ate itself. Tanesha James stands before a judge, not as an officer of the court, but as a co-conspirator. For her role in the assassination, she is sentenced to 20 years in state prison. For the gunman, the sentence is a mountain of time he can never climb. Life plus 75 years. The judge makes it clear he is never to breathe free air again. He is moved to Southwood State Prison, where the bad boy persona begins to fade into the gray reality of a life sentence. The years turn into decades, and the man in the cell starts to wither. Multiple sclerosis takes hold of his body, eventually confining the once feared gunman to a wheelchair and a breathing tube. In 2022, he makes a final plea to the court for a compassionate release to die at home. But the family of the fallen officer, John Sirek, hasn't forgotten the hallway. They show up to the hearing to ensure that justice remains absolute. The petition is denied. In 2024, 31 years after the shots in the courthouse, the story finally ends in a prison infirmary bed. He dies a ward of the state, the final act in a tragedy that started with a gun in a bag on the 11th floor.